Hit record when you're ready. Hey everybody, Steve Cady here at Bowling Green State University with Nexus for Change, the Academy of Management, ODNC, Organization Development and Change Division. And I'm really blessed to be here with three people that I just have a great time with, all three of you. Um, how we started this was sending out an invite to a lot of people that are I consider thought leaders in their areas and said, come share. And we had so many that we ended up with a series that's going all the way into March. So it's been pretty great having this. The design is pretty straightforward. We come together, three people that don't know each other usually, share their passion and their passion topic, if you will. And we see the connection that comes out of it because it's all around human-centered change. It's all around the human-centered aspects of that within living systems, if you will, within a broader context. And yeah, I just feel really blessed to be here with you all. And they'll share, then we'll have a breakout, and you all will share with each other. And we come back and we have plenty of time because it's 90 minutes for a Q&A. And that's where it's been really rich, really, really rich, is allowing this synergy of concepts to come together in really a kind of unexpected and inspiring way. So with that, I just want to give a shout out to people that are here. Lisa, wave Lisa. Lisa's our producer director. She keeps us on track. There's Teo, who keeps things going a lot of times with getting people and helping with the larger strategy of the sessions we do. We have various students in here from our master's and our doctoral program. I'm so glad our doctoral program is a 3-year professional program for working adults that come in for these amazing residencies. It's really well designed. People are doing well, leaving with a really solid human-centered degree, organization development and change that they have that helps them go out and do really good work in the world. And so I'm really blessed to be a part of that program. So with that, Bob and I go way back. Bob's a graduate of our master's program in organization development and change. I really want, Bob, for you to get an honorary doctorate at BGSU. I'm going to be advocating for that. Before I retire, that's my goal, is to get you to have a doctorate from BGSU. I'm so proud because what
You
Bob
better
did, and
hurry, Steve. I'm getting older.
yeah, I know, I'm going to hurry as fast as I can. I really am. Um, uh, when Bob got started, I remember seeing a whiteboard with all these concepts and terms and saying, "Hey, I want to try this idea on you," and so we were talking through that, and he engaged a lot of people and developed the leadership circle, which has become a really powerful instrument for personal change and transformational change in organizations. It's fantastic. I've gone through it, and I'm just really blessed to be growing personally from it right now. I'm going through a lot with that. It's been great. And so Bob is just a wonderful asset for our community. And so I'm glad for you to make the time today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and then Rebecca will go next, and then Rianna will go third, and I'll introduce the two of them when it's their time. So Bob, how about I turn it over to you, and we'll ride with you on your next few minutes.
Great. So thanks for being here. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure, honor, really. I graduated, I finished my classwork in 82. It took me a while to get my thesis, but I finished my classwork in 82. And all my life, I've cared about one thing. Uh, how do we help people really grow and develop? How do we bring out that exquisiteness of being and put it in service of whatever to create a future that's worth living? And that's been my passion, and it led me to this Bowling Green University. And when I graduated from there, I ended up eventually as the director of organization development and leadership development at St. Charles Hospital, a hospital that's local. And that's really where it started. What became the leadership circle began as a leadership crisis for me. I Well, I won't get into the whole story. Don't have time for it. But eventually I called in a consultant to work with me, and she sat me down at breakfast the morning before a 3-day offsite with my team. And she said, well, I've talked to your entire team, and frankly, you're the problem. And I go, what do you mean I'm the problem? She said, well, you don't offer any leadership. And I said, "Oh, I know about that. What else did you find out?" And she was kind of shocked by that. I won't get into the whole story, but that conversation began uh, the journey, a profound journey. I heard myself say to her, "How do you expect me to lead when I have no leadership? There's nothing I can do. It's not my fault. You don't understand." I didn't know that I was speaking from this conditioned self, deeply in need of approval. It was only 6 months later that I had an epiphany. Oh, they're not the problem, the leadership team that I was so frustrated with. They're not the problem. I'm the problem. I want to lead. I want to be an agent of change in the organization, and I got to have everybody like me all the time, especially the people above me in whose hands I vest with my future. That's a catch 22. I can't lead from here. I was getting the first glimpse into what I now call a reactive level of mind or reactive leadership, where our sense of worth and identity is made up from outside us. I'm living up to your expectations. I haven't yet configured a self that can live by its own internal standards, even though I have values and vision and sense of purpose. Because the next thing that consultant asked me way back was, "Well, what would you do if you could?" And that rocked me because out came all the stuff I wanted to be about with my life, not only in the organization, but with my life, which has now all come true, frankly. I didn't realize that she was asking me the fundamental question of the next level of leadership development or stage of adult development, which is what would you do if you could? What would I do if I weren't so caught up in the need for everybody to like me all the time, to be so agreeable, so loyal, so uh, nicely spoken? And that led me on. And this next level of leadership is one that's not so much authored by others, but authored by self, authored by an internal sense of what's most important. Question that emerged for me is, what's the life I came here to live? What must I be about in this life in order to live the life I came here to live and not somebody else's life? And leaders who are functioning at this level are very purpose focused, vision purpose focused. They're trying to create an organization that matters, that they believe in, and they're trying to craft themselves, deploy themselves in every moment into circumstances in a way that embodies that future. They're acting it out in every encounter. And this is a very high form of leadership. We don't measure a lot of that in our leadership circle profile. In the adult development literature, maybe 15% of leaders fully configure that internal, authentic, visionary self, self-authored self. Where I'm passionate now is that I think that level of leadership is not adequate to the challenges we're in today. I mean, just look around. The current world order is coming apart at the seams. We think we've been dealing with complexity. We've talked for years about VUCA and NBANI and so on. We ain't seen nothing yet. So leaders today are not only challenged with managing in the midst of that complexity, leading a thriving organization in the midst of all that, they also, whether they accept the challenge or not, are implicitly challenged with, we have to reinvent the future. We have to invent a new future because the future we're creating back to normal is a death sentence. And nobody knows how to do it. And so we have to now evolve into what I'm calling integral informed, unity informed integral leadership. Unity informed integral leadership. where we're not so much authoring a future as it's authoring us, where we're making ourselves more and more available to a universal field that has its own intentions. And while I don't have a whole lot of time to try to explicate all this, we're now developing a 1 year, what we're calling the Unity Academy, to help coaches and consultants initially, leaders, as we really get clear on how to make this business relevant. How do we open up the latent capacities that are largely ignored? Our capacities to actually plug in to this quantum universal field that's being described in quantum physics. I'm really excited actually about the times we're in, because I'm one of these people that likes to pull a lot of theory and framework together into a more coherent, elegant model. And this is a time where the leading edge of science, whether that be quantum physics, quantum biology, quantum neurology, quantum chemistry, is um, conjoining, if you will, seeing the same fundamental reality that the great traditions, north, south, east, west, spiritual, non-dual traditions, have been describing for millennia. The reason that the current order is so dysfunctional is because it's built on a false presence, what Einstein called a stubbornly persistent illusion, the illusion that we are separate, that anything is separate, that there's a separate you and a separate me. And so the new has to be built foundationally on a principle of our inherent unity. Because reality, I'm not talking about a principle or an ideal, reality, fundamental reality is a unity. In the quantum field that's being described, the quantum world has been around since early 1900s, and it hasn't yet made it, that the amazing learnings here haven't made it into mainstream consciousness, let alone leadership, let alone even the scientific community. And we could spend an hour or two or three explicating all that that is suggesting. For example, there is no matter. There's only energy. There's only a field. Period. End of sentence. Only light, only energy. And that energy is information. So it's an informational, energetic field. There is no empty space. That field is everywhere. There's nowhere where it's not. That field is a unity. Information is instantaneously updated throughout the entire cosmos. It's called entanglement. It's called the holographic informational theory of the universe. So we are literally different configurations of one universal field. And deeper than that, the great scientists, Einstein, Niels Bohr, Max Planck, and so on, that founded this quantum understanding, suggest that deeper than all that is consciousness, awareness itself, which is exactly what the mystics of all traditions have been saying for millennia. That the universe is a conscious system. Einstein said there is no matter, it's energy, it's spirit reduced to the point of visibility, lowered in frequency to be reduced to the point of visibility. Niels Bohr said more fundamental, more foundational, more fundamental than time and space and energy and matter, all this, more fundamental is consciousness. Schrodinger said the same thing, and on and on. And we're functioning on a paradigm that has yet to acknowledge any of this, and it's destroying us. And so, how do we awaken leadership that's much more integral, much more systemically informed, but also informed by unity? So, I want to just drop you into one experiential here for just a couple minutes, what that might be like. So, I'd invite you to close your eyes for a minute and relax into your body. And just take this in, not so much with your mind, but with your whole body. Let this land in you. You are 99.9999999 13 nines empty space, except it's not empty. But let's just call it empty because it's very still when you encounter it. You are vastly spacious. There's almost no matter there. If you took all the matter of all the people on the planet and compressed it so all the space was removed and all the protons were just stacked on each other, we would all fit in a sugar cube. Feel that. And now just bring your attention to your breath. Just notice the sensation of breath. You don't have to breathe a different way. Just notice your breathing. Just bringing your attention into the heart space, into the chest space of your body, and noticing your breath. The rise and fall of your chest, the rhythm, the pulse of your breath. And then just see if you can notice that same rhythm in your belly. Notice what it's like to feel breath in your belly. And you notice it in your perineum, in the lower abdomen, all the way to the pelvic floor. Can you feel that pulsation of breath even there? And even into your buttocks and your thighs, legs and feet. Just noticing how your whole body breathes. Notice breath in your back, the back of your neck, your throat. Shoulders and arms, even in your head. So that now your whole body is breathing. And if you bring your attention back to your heart space, simply breathing. And just notice the stillness and spaciousness that opens here. We could spend a lot more time here, but I want to turn over to the next presenter. Just mark this spot. This is an entry place for what in developmental terms is called awareness of awareness. Awareness of this fundamental ground of reality. It's accessible. It's immediately accessible. An opening to larger meta awarenesses or capacities of intuition and manifestation and so on that come with this integral informed, unity informed way of living starts right here. And so relax your focus, and we'll see how this blends with the other presenters. Turning it over.
Thanks. I think anytime that I need a nap, I just need to do this for about 5, 10 minutes, and I'm like, so it's perfect. This
Yeah.
is this is a really nice, relaxing way to get energized.
Well, Connie Ray Andreas is doing a lot of work, which I won't get into, about taking core blogs and dissolving them into this awareness.
Yeah,
He's also discovered that doing that work as she goes to sleep with some anxiety, because it drops you into awareness, puts her right to sleep.
that's really cool. Can you make sure Teo and Lisa put the names that Bob has mentioned into the thing, into the chat, maybe a link to her work.
Connie
Her
Ray,
name is Lisa what? What's her name?
Connie Ray Andreas.
Connie Ray Andreas.
Connie Ray is one word.
Okay.
Andreas. The
Okay.
wholeness approach is powerful.
Wholeness. I like that. I like it. It's really nice.
She's an ex-NLP person. Well, she's still an NLP person, but she's really taken it further.
Gotcha. Gotcha. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming for everybody out there. So thanks, Bob. That was really really nice. It was perfect. So Rebecca is a new friend of mine, and Rebecca's going to go next. Um, the way I want to introduce you, Rebecca, is just talk about the best learning I've gotten from watching you facilitate, which is just how to allow people to be a part of an experience in any way that fits for them, and how you. I remember sitting as you were doing an activity with our doctoral students when they were working with you, and you said, you can sit outside and watch in because we were in a little courtyard outside the room we were on. You can sit in the room on the side. You can come in and participate in this wherever you want to be a part of this and be connected and notice and watch and witness or actively engaged with this. And however you want to pay attention to the experience for you and be here with us in a way that works for you. And you can and be engaged any way you want. And how that impacted me was that really I don't people can be involved in any way they want when we invite them in, and it's okay. And so of allowing people to have that permission really makes for a wonderful group experience when a group is coming together, particularly when we're doing things that might be processing and where we're having to reflect, and we have our own way. So I just use that in everything. My kids at dinner time, right? So if you want to, that's okay. If you want to watch us eat dinner, you can watch us eat dinner. If you don't want to be at dinner, but be with us in some way that works for you. You can sit over there. So it's a wonderful way to include everybody. And so I think I tell people you're one of my most favorite facilitators ever, and I love watching you because I learn so much. So thanks for being a part of this program, our doctoral program with us, and being a part of this with us today. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And I think what you've just described has been somehow influenced is too light a word, but shown to us by the communities, the grassroots we work in. Whether we like it or not, nobody's going to do it in the way that we would like to control. And actually out of that comes innovation, all sorts of innovation, and the sort of dismantling of certain walls in our minds. And Bob, thank you so much. You used all sorts of words that really chimed, and the meditation at the end reminds us of something we talk about, the undoing of doing. Because what? Because often we're not perceiving something. And you talked about that as well. There are other resonances that we're just not aware of. And it sounds esoteric, but it's not. It's certainly in our work, it's people are communicating on different resonances, if you like, particularly those people we work with who communicate without words. People labeled as PMLD, profound and multiple learning disabled people, for example, or those living with profound dementia. Many of whom aren't using words to communicate their experience. And so what we're all learning from each other, from our communities, and being guided and taught by our communities that have these descriptions and labels, is that we're shedding, we're dismantling, we're undoing doing, we're learning how to listen with our whole bodies. So that really chimed with me. Lots of what you said chimed. Leadership informed by unity. You also used the word entanglement at some point to describe quantum physics. But interestingly enough, one of the co-founders of Entelechy Arts, the organization I currently work with, described us, and that us being the communities we work with, the artists, the core team, the trustees, everybody, the usness, as a special entanglement of relationships. And so I was really riffing off some of the language that you were bringing, and also working with energy. Our artists in particular, our musicians, dance artists, sculptors, are often talking about tuning into energy and each other's energy, and beginning to unpack what that means. So, gosh, I think I will do this. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to conjure before I talk and throw together some of the thoughts I had. I'm just going to conjure one of our members. I'm going to call her Karen for now. So Karen and me have known each other for 33 years. I've worked for Entelechy as its creative director, probably for 10 years, but been in other roles before that. So I've worked for Entelechy for 33 years as well. And so Carol and me met right at the beginning. Carol is labelled with PMLD, and I'm going to share her disability more to emphasise her other ways of communicating. So Carol is deafblind or dual impaired and has a learning disability. I'm actually an older person now, so I am one of those people we fundraise for. So there's a point at which we can't otherize anyone. So yes, Carol and me meet once a week in a program. We run different programs, different mediums, different art forms for different groups of people in different contexts, traditional art spaces, non-traditional spaces, in complicated spaces like hospital wards or palliative care, in SEN schools. And so Carol and me connect through touch. So I'm going to try and share just for 2 minutes, conjure Carol, and invite you to be part of that conjuring. So Lisa, I was just wondering, could we go to gallery? I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but because Bob's put me in such a meditative state, it feels right to take a bit of that energy forwards first, and to also start with Karen, who, Karen, this is an interpretation of Karen. So if you put your hands together just like this, great. And then just bring it to fingertip touch. So Karen's unique way for her is to communicate through the tips of her fingers with the tips of somebody else's fingers. That's one part of her wonderful vocabulary. And if you breathe into that, we're doing it with our own fingers for now, and you'll notice that you have to slightly press against your fingers to keep that engagement. And if you just breathe into that. And now try doing it closing your eyes. See if you can find, it's a bit like the Incy Wincy spider thing, but see if you can find your fingers with your eyes closed, breathing into that, sighing into that. And then just going on a journey with fingertips connected, maybe a figure of eight, maybe a circle, through the space, away from you, into the space. Sadly, I can't come to America. And then bring that journey, fingertips connected, to your heart, back to you. Then out into the space of your room. Some of you seem to have snow outside. I can see through the Zoom screen. And keeping contact with those fingertips, different fingertips, finding contact and coming back to you. There we go. And breathe. Great. I was going to take it further, but I can't quite see the gallery where we actually try and communicate with each other with fingers close up to the camera. But so far I'm seeing Stephen only, so don't worry about it. Yeah, I can see Bob, I can see a few people, but there's a more tactile way of connecting with each other. There I can see Lisa. So it becomes more tactile. And that way of connecting with each other over decades, week in, week out, day in, day out, develops something in all of us and develops a different quality of presence, I would say, and many more things that maybe 15 minutes isn't enough to touch upon. So I'm Rebecca, as you know, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist working across different art forms. I'm a mentor and I'm the creative director at Entelechy Arts. And I've worked in the same organization for 33 years, which is kind of unusual. And a lot of us have worked in this same organization for a long time. And I think the reason why, and we still have new people folding in all the time, but I think the reason why is it's constantly inquiry led. We're constantly asking questions. We constantly often don't know. And there's a sense of it being artistic in the whole sense of that word. So somebody's asked, what's Entelechy's purpose and mission? Well, I'm going to speak from a place of being a practitioner first and foremost, which is what I am. I work on the ground, applied knowledge that gets translated into words. And often some things get lost in translation, some things get gained. But Entelechy is an arts organisation, a charity, working in the voluntary sector in South East London in Lewisham. And it started out with the dismantling of the big asylums and the big hospitals, the big institutions that hid away those of us who didn't conform to the status quo. So those of us with a learning disability, a disability, I think soldiers from the First World War who had post-traumatic stress also were hidden away. People were a bit wild were hidden away, people who didn't fit in. And in the late 1980s in the Community Care Bill, those big hospitals were dismantled and Entelechy grew out of that migration of people back into their local community in ordinary homes, in ordinary streets. So Entelechy's mission, well, I could read you what our mission is. And if I can find my glasses, where are my glasses? This is where I think I put everything in the right place. So this is when words like mission come up, it sort of lends itself more to the language that we use for funders. But we are a community of change makers, committed to ensuring every individual can contribute to their community and its cultural life, regardless of any barriers they may be experiencing. So this is taken from a recent funding bid, and this language is co-shaped by a fair few of us in senior management. And as a methodology, we begin by dismantling the destructive assumption that older and disabled people cannot make a powerful contribution to the creative sector. And that goes on and on. And there's lots of, I think our mission is always shifting as well in response to so much change. From a practitioner's point of view, I think the special entanglement of relationship is our mission, across difference, across chasms of difference, and the incredible innovation that arises from that. Often the attributes that are given to our sector, and there's not just our organisations, many amazing organisations in our sector of often called arts, health and well-being, used to be called community arts, but I see it as arts in its holistic sense, and it's not severed from its roots sense, intact with its roots intact from when time began. We're often on the boundaries between different sectors, testing those boundaries between care, human rights, social action, and art and culture. But we're often described as trailblazing, innovative, I don't know, thinking outside the box, cutting edge. Those are the things that our sector can be described as. I feel whenever that, for the sake of it, we're just that, because we're bringing into presence all of the human story, particularly those that have been undervalued or relegated or ghettoized. For instance, the human journey of palliative care. For instance, Karen's mode of communicating that doesn't use words. And there are many, for instances. And that means part of ourselves, whether we're able-bodied or not, are being relegated as well. So it's about bringing our whole self into being. And I am slightly riffing here, I have to say. So that's Entelechy. I can say more about who we are, but I think I'll stop there. I think it's important just to also say that it's about value, upending our value systems, provoking and challenging what we value and what we don't value. And one example could be, we see immense cultural value in an improvisation using music and movement and song and whatever, touch around the bedside of somebody with profound autism who is in palliative care, and that's cultural value, not the word therapy, to a big production we're doing with massive production values, hell of a lot of money thrown in. It's never hell of a lot of money, too little money, actually. I shouldn't say that. Our director, Mike Brooks, would go, oh, we've never had, but in a big theatre that's quite well known and high profile, and working with some of two famous artists in the mix. So we see both of them as equal value, equal impact, equal weight, equal gravitas, both teaching us really profound things. I think that's probably enough about that. So what I wanted to touch on is our organisation is going through huge change and more conscious change. This is also happening in the sector as a whole. Other organisations are going through this change. We're learning from other organisations, they're learning from us. And there's quite a good allyship forming, which didn't used to be the case between organisations in this sector, led by people with learning disabilities or older people, and all the different social justice and all the different isms and labels. So these two areas are embedding leadership of the most impacted. How lived experience of disability informs organisational change. So this is not just about delivering sort of our delivery to others who are recipients. Well, they're never recipients, we're collaborators and co-creators, but it's actually embedding top down, centre out in the organisation, so that we now have a new chair in Jess Tom, the amazing, I hope she doesn't mind being called amazing, disability activist, disability artist, disabled artist, founder of Tourette's Hero, and leader of her own charity and pioneer. And or social enterprise. I think she has a social enterprise. So Jess Tom is now our chair, which has completely altered how our board meetings feel. I mean, we've become human beings. And in that chairing, Jess has invited us to have all our board meetings scribed by an artist who in situ paints and distills what's being said. So this is already a change that's coming internally from outside, inside out, top down. Uh, so that it's easier to read. So easy read. It's visual. If you're neurodivergent, you're going to be able to understand it. But not only that, all of us find it easier to read, and all of us can't wait to open the file. Whereas before, when we got board minutes, it's like, oh my God, do I have to open this file? Because it's just going to be a wall of words that I've got to crack into. So that's one of the areas of innovation. And Jeff has introduced us to the 10 principles of disability justice by Sins Invalid, who are a disability justice-based performance project in San Francisco. And then also we've been learning about crip time as well. And there's a fabulous quote by Alison Kofer, which I won't share now, Alison Kofer, about crip time. So we're having to learn about temporality, which we already knew in our workshops, but internally in the organization, inside out, top down. How do we work with different modes of time, of time that can allow for different discoveries, actually, and is much more inclusive. There are other things, but I think we're coming probably to the end of my sort of brief. The other themes I wanted to touch on briefly is attentiveness to creative process, attentiveness to process in a world that's outcome-driven, impact-driven, output-driven, evidence-driven. We're going. It's not to say some of that isn't bad, and not to erase that completely, but the attention to process is vital. Because that's where the innovation is. And actually knowing that your outputs, impacts, outputs, products are going to be fine if you have ethical processes, rigorous processes, and processes that are guided by your values and principles. And so there's that, and there's also the contribution, what does sensory literacy make to society and organizational change, any organizations? So we've touched on sensory literacy through Carol's communication, through undoing doing. We work a lot with not knowing, with softening into chaos, with the things that Steve described in introducing me, and nurturing other ways of being, and bringing the presence of people who are not normally present in the center of society into the center in any way that they would like to be, so that they have an impact and an influence. And we're also working with Lewisham Speaking Up, which is an advocacy project which enables people with PMLD to meet politicians and MPs and policymakers directly, which means that they have to roll on the floor with Karen as well. They have to undo doing. They have to step out of role. They have to shed and dismantle some of the institutionalisms within themselves in order to hear that resonance and to get to know somebody. I'm just going to leave you with one thing, and then I know we're moving on, aren't we? I'll leave you with actually a quote from Kai Thomas. There's so many quotes here. And this is what Kai Thomas, who's an artist who's worked with us for a lot of projects. He's now set up Ambient Jam in North Wales. So Entelechy is springing up nationally in collaboration with Gallery Carnarvon and Antoine Wanfa, the housing provider. They speak Welsh there. It's such a different country. It's amazing. Anyway, he says what he's learned from Ambient Jam, which is the program in collaboration with Karen and people like Karen, improvisation, new ways of being with another, new modes of relating, new capacities of listening, new levels of being with awkwardness, new opportunities of not knowing, new ways of de-skilling, disruption of ways of relating based on time, how being with different members calls up a different way of being and relating in myself, in brackets, huge learning, And he then says, ambient jam calls up the heart, one that language doesn't reach at all. And I'll stop there because I think my time is up.
That was really nice. Thank you. And I like that quote. I could see that with an ambient jam, talking about that. I could see that. Yeah. An ambient jam is what she was saying and that's my first experience was I walked in a room in which there were a bunch of people in the room and there was stuff all over the place, arts and crafts and paper and music was playing and there were people in wheelchairs and other things and ways of being and there were able people and disabled people or however you wish to describe the people with the disabilities and they were together and they were playing and crafting and singing and dancing and I was watching this going, wow, this is pretty amazing, and I just loved that and then when we did the thing with the one person with cerebral palsy who led us in a dance when my students came over and we were able to with her imagining a person who doesn't get the opportunity to lead like that all the time, how special it was for her to lead us when she can't communicate and she can't control her body the way she wants. But she led us in a dance the best way, and we all followed along, and it was just really amazing to experience being in that moment with her. I
That's
think that's the
great.
essence of ambient jam, I think.
And that's Hannah James. Hannah James is our associate director now. So she's moved into the center of the organization.
Wow, that's awesome. I really like that. So thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. And we'll bring in Rianna. And Rianna has this,
Steve,
yeah.
before you introduce me, I'd like to drop people into pairs just for 5 minutes. There's some old research from years ago that says that adults have about on average a 20-minute attention span. And our wonderful colleagues here have been listening to us, and there's so much that Bob and Rebecca have shared. I'd love to give them just 5 minutes in pairs out of my time to just like connect and share and get themselves regrounded and then come back for my bit. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I think the it should be threes because hopefully everybody will have a pair to talk to. So Lisa, if you want to do
Oh,
that, do it
okay.
now and let's go and have a little chat and come back in about 3 minutes.
And the question I would ask is, what's being evoked in you right now? Like what's most present for you right in this moment, given these two wonderful speakers?
All right. So what's being evoked in us here that are not in one of those pairs?
I'm just aware, since I'm here in the wake of what Bob and Rebecca have shared. And of course, thinking about my own thing, which I'm totally like thinking about undoing the doing of it. And my body is just like hot. I'm not quite sweating, but I'm so activated by just listening to and experiencing the spaces that you both created. It's just phenomenal. So I probably want to give myself this 5 minute break more than anything else so I could kind of help myself transition a little bit. But I'd be curious in what others of you might say as well.
Yeah, I think hot is a good one. I feel my temperature has gone up and
Yeah.
I feel I've splashed everybody in a Jackson Pollock style. Multicolored colors. And I'm glad you've slowed it down a bit. Yeah.
Is there any way we can support you, Rianna?
Well, you could encourage me to breathe.
Yeah, well, we'll just breathe with you then.
And it helps to hear from other people as well. Like Steve has spoken a bit, the two of you have spoken. I'd love to hear like what's most present for Lisa and or Teo, if you have anything.
I find that I'm in a really, is there a trichotomy? Is that a word? I have a trichotomy going on between gratitude for being able to be here and hear this. I've had the honor to hear a lot about your work, Rebecca. I've had the honor to hear from you directly, Bob, and be exposed to your work through folks like Stephen Bryce. Rianna, I've gratefully have gotten to read your stuff and spend time with you. So there's that gratitude piece. There is a hopefulness that comes out of that, but I also that is like mixing up with the sense of it's not despair. We have this word in German called Weltschmerz, which is like pain for the world. I'm experiencing some of that at the moment, and it's maybe a specific North American pain predominantly, but yeah, this sense of just with all these things that we can be doing, what in the world are we doing that we're not doing that? And so those three things are going on in me at the moment, and they're moments where the gratitude is at the front, and there's moments where the hopefulness is at the front, and then there is sometimes that Weltschmerz. Yeah, I'll find a nice definition for you that maybe makes a little sense of that
just
word.
put the German in the chat for me because thank you, Weltschmerz. Yeah, I know that term. When I was listening to you, I kept thinking, is he saying trench mouth? I don't think he's saying that.
No. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about Weltschmerz. It's pretty on point.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just say that I'm closing the room, so they'll be back in 60 seconds. But for me, I think Bob, you starting with kind of the condition of the world and everything that's wrapped up in that, and I just feel like with Bob and Rebecca's talk, I just keep feeling like I gotta be sure to be present. Just anything I can do to help me not withdraw from whatever's going on. So I kind of boiled it down, at least for me, to presence and how I can, untangle myself from those things and be me and stay present. So that's kind of where I'm at. We got 7 seconds and everyone's back.
We're with you, Rianna. We got your back.
All right.
You got this. Enjoy.
And Steve, you were starting to introduce me, and I interrupted that.
Yeah, that's right, and it's good. So for everybody, welcome back. I'm sure you had some really interesting conversations and reactions and so forth. If you want to put it into the chat now, just share a reaction to your conversation or anything that you'd like to reflect on that you can share in the chat. That would be great. So you can go ahead and do that now as I introduce Rianna. So Rianna's really, what's great about Rianna, and I think Bob, you alluded to this one and what you like to do, which is look at a lot of different things and bring them in together into some kind of coherent model, framework, way of thinking and so Rianna does that. She loves to bring things together and she a lot of times she'll take them and put them into a big piece of paper or whatever it might be can lay on the floor that people can experience, or put up on a wall and kind of experience. And similar to the leadership circle, kind of as you can step in places on it and stuff like that. That's what Rianna likes to do. And I really like the models and the things that you've created. They're very fascinating. So I'd love to hear more about what you'd like to share with us today, Rianna.
Thanks, Steve. So I'd like to talk specifically about what's happening in the U.S. with diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. You've all seen the acronym, I think. And I want to apologize up front if there's so much U.S. context in what I'm going to share or any acronyms or whatever that are unfamiliar to people who are not native speakers of English or not as familiar with the U.S. context as others of us are. This is very much a U.S. thing, and I've heard that the United States has an impact on the rest of the world typically. And I know the rest of the world looks at us a lot and laughs at us quite a bit for the things that have been going on. But I want to just talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not that process per se, but what's happening with those efforts and initiatives and programming across the U.S. in most organizations, especially organizations that are receiving any kind of government funding, and that would include governmental organizations. I've worked with many large multinational corporations. I tried to count them the other day as I was thinking about this, and I just couldn't. I couldn't count them all. I got north of 20, and I stopped at that point. And also a few government organizations, which, as you know, are under the eye of Elon Musk right now, who's an appointee of Alan, thank you. Who's an appointee of Mr. Trump, our new president. But I want to make a few comments about all of that, and then I have a series of polling statements where there's an opportunity for you all and myself to voice our opinion on things, and we can just kind of look at what's in the room, in terms of attitudes, beliefs, and values, that kind of thing. And then I hope we'll have time at the end for you to spend some time again, and probably in the same small groups, to talk about what you learned about your colleagues here, or the kinds of attitudes, beliefs, and values that are in the room. I'm a little self-conscious today because I have a new appliance in my mouth and it's affecting the way I speak. So I just want to say that so I can kind of let it go. I want to start with, I want to start with the rubber band. You all can see this. I want to move it into Lisa's picture, but then I lose it. But if you can see it, sort of. Now, there was an author, and I think he's still with us, Robert Fritz, who wrote a book years ago, back in the 80s, I think, titled, yeah, you know that, Bob. What's it called? The Path of Least Resistance. And in the early days, I knew Bob back in the 80s, and I went to a session of his where he came out with a rubber band. And he was talking about a theory of change, which was that, in its natural state, the rubber band looks like this. This is one of the larger rubber bands from the United States Postal Service. It's an official government rubber band. And his point was that when we get engaged in culture change or individual change, like when we're trying to create a new habit or let go of a bad habit and so forth, we kind of pull ourselves or pull the system out as far as it'll go. And if we let it go too far, then, it flies across the room and hits the cat in the nose, or we hit ourselves in the thumb and it hurts. But if we hold it out long enough and then let it go, it relaxes back into a close approximation of its original shape, but doesn't quite go back completely. So I was thinking of that as an analogy in terms of a change theory for how the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that have been going on in the United States for some years, and especially with a lot of fervid angsting in the national consciousness after the murder of George Floyd, which was, as you remember, it was coterminous with the beginning of the pandemic and all the shutdowns and so forth. So there was massive trauma going on in the United States, and especially for George Floyd himself personally, because he died in front of our eyes. And for people of color in particular, and African-American or African-American people, colleagues, especially, for such a long period of time. Well, then there was this incredible explosion from what had been up until that point of corporations and government agencies focusing on, we need to do something different. What we're doing is not working, the attitudes, et cetera, have not changed enough for people of color and other marginalized groups to be included with access to resources and opportunities to the same extent as insider groups have been. So there was a massive thing. And then, of course, very predictably, when you think about systems change theory, there has been a backlash to that. Boom, there's a backlash. And we're dealing with the backlash right now. So the way I see it is, for those of you, you've probably studied OD and systems change. The father of organization development is pretty commonly acknowledged as being Kurt Lewin. Everybody recognize the name Kurt Lewin? And he had a very simple model of change where the first part of it, and I wish I had a slide, but I don't. But if you can imagine like 3 spaces, and on the left-hand side, because that's where we start in the English language, it's like the status quo. It's like the way things are. And then over the far to the right, that space is the desired outcome, like what we're moving toward and what we're hoping we can create and so forth. And in the middle is the transition, you know, and that's a messy place, a painful place. It is and feels chaotic. I think we're in that right now. And we're already seeing resistance to the backlash. Because the powers that be, of course, don't, you know, the powers that be are the powers that were, and they set things up for themselves. Well, I mean, I'm one of them as a white person for sure, and able-bodied and all of that. And it was people in my people groups who set up the status quo years ago and used various powers, including violence, to set it up and maintain it. Well, they've reached their tolerance point for, you know, how much they're willing to stand. And so things are kind of snapping back now. But I just wanted to read a couple of things to you. You know, Martin Luther King said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That's one of his more famous quotes. And there's like a big hiccup going on right now. So if you read Forbes, just in the last yesterday or the last couple of weeks, the corporations that are US based that have shut down or renamed or in some way walked back their DEI initiatives include Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Coke, Pepsi. Pepsi removed all references to DEI. This is from Forbes, by the way, after writing in their 2024 investor report that DEI is a competitive advantage. These are companies that, like, I enrich their stockholders, you know, I buy their stuff. Not so much Molson Coors, because I don't think it's a great beer, but that's a big name and we know it. Disney, PBS, Google, General Motors and General Electric, Intel, Amazon, the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian, McDonald's, Walmart, Boeing, Ford, and the list goes on. Those were the ones that kind of just popped out at me. And many of those walkbacks are specifically targeted these days at LGBTQ communities, communities that call themselves in some way queer on the dimensions of difference that have to do with sexual orientation, gender identity, and so forth. I'm just curious how many of us on the call right now, I'm one of them, has someone in our family or someone else who's really close who belongs to that spectrum in some way or multiple places. I mean, how many of us do? Yeah, that's just us right here, right now. So that's just a sampling, but there's more. It's backlash, I think. But there's also now, I'm continuing to talk about from a systems theory perspective. There's also resistance to the backlash. So those companies, I wanted to read that out to you too. Where are they? Okay. These are the ones, again, reported by Forbes: Costco, Apple, Delta, Cisco, Deutsche Bank, and the NFL. So I put the NFL last because Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner of the NFL, is a hometown boy from here in Western New York, Chautauqua County. And he said the NFL would continue to pursue its DEI efforts, quote, because we've not only convinced ourselves, I think we've proven that it does make the NFL better. We're not in this because it's a trend to get into or a trend to get out of it. So I shared the Martin Luther King quote, and now I want to share a quote from, this is from a letter that was written and distributed, a memo on government stationery on February 14th, a few days ago, from Craig Trainer, who is the new acting assistant secretary of the Department of Education in the US, so on the Trump cabinet. Educational institutions have toxically indoctrinated students in the false premise that the US is built upon systemic and structural racism and advanced discriminatory policies and practices. Proponents of these discriminatory practices have further justified them under the banner of DEI, smuggling racial stereotypes and explicit race consciousness into everyday training programming and discipline. So those are kind of two poles between what Martin Luther King said and what Mr. Trainer just had to say and what's going on. And we're right now in this messy, chaotic place. So those are my comments. Now I want to do this poll, which Lisa is going to run for us. And this is an opportunity here. I'll read it out loud, and you can be looking at it on the screen as soon as Lisa gets it up. So I'll read it out loud, and then you choose what your response is, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And strongly disagree would be 1, and strongly agree would be 10. And you might be somewhere in the middle, and you make your own judgment about that. We'll go through a series of these and just see what the group is saying, and then we'll get into small groups and talk about it. So number 1, it's important for everyone to have, Lisa, where do people report, by the way? Do they just click on a number?
Yes, I believe so. And I see that some folks have done it already.
Okay, great. It's important for everyone to have equal access to resources and opportunities, irrespective of their insider or outsider status on any dimension of diversity. For example, race, color, sex, gender, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, ability, etc. And then just go ahead and choose your number from strongly disagree to strongly agree and click on submit, and we'll see how many of us respond and what our percentages, where they're at.
Rianna, I think that it'll have us do all of them first, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I need to open it up again then, Lisa.
We can read it. It's pretty clear.
I can't see it now. Could you repost it for me? I don't know what I did with it.
Oh, I don't know that I have an option for that.
You as co-host can see it.
Well, if everyone else can see it, why don't you all just go through it? Lisa, would you be willing to read off the items? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The second was, it's important to be aware of the diversity in the room. So 1, strongly disagree, to 10, strongly agree. Next is, it's important to be inclusive toward others, whether they are like me or different. Number 4, I have some trans kids or adults in my life I'm concerned about in the current climate.
The only thing is I'm not getting to vote.
Oh, are you not? Really? Oh,
I can't see it. Yeah.
Oh, I got you. I don't think I can.
That's
I
back
wouldn't
okay.
up
worry
again.
about it right now. I think
Keep
it's
going
just,
with
it is what it
everybody
is.
else.
Yep. It's important for me to be aware of my emotions in any given social context. And two more. When others act inclusive toward me, I notice that I don't always feel like I belong. And finally, systems change is inextricably interwoven with individual behaviors and their impact. So we'll give a couple seconds to finish.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Well done. And I know I really put you on the spot. I feel
right.
very backed up. Thank you. Are the results being posted in terms of percentages and where the group reported?
I
So
will
people
share the
can see.
results right
Okay.
now. Okay, I ended the poll.
I don't see the results. It's just showing the first statement.
You have to scroll down.
Oh. So that's 100% of what? Oh, 100% reported.
10. 100% said 10 to the first.
I
Yep.
see. Okay, thank you.
11 results.
All right, so the second one, it's like 11. Okay, so the highest percentage went for strongly. Okay. Yeah, I'd like everyone just to read through these results and then notice what comes up for you as you read them. If you have a question, if you have an emotional reaction of some kind, and that's what I'd like you to share. We'll have maybe 5 minutes in your groups, 5 to 7 minutes, Steve.
We don't have that much time. We need to go ahead and move towards wrapping up to have some discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're at 17 after. I'd like him to have some time to talk.
Sure.
Okay.
Are
Yeah.
we
So
going
I
to talk about that discussion in the room?
No, we're gonna not go into a breakout. So we're gonna stay here and
Right.
we're gonna have discussion.
we're a pretty small group.
Mhm.
It seems like a lot of the results lean toward the strongly agree end of the, and that's all I can say about it right now. All right.
Rianna, I was curious about question number 6.
Which is,
When others act inclusive toward me, I notice I don't always feel like I belong.
mhm.
It felt a little counterintuitive to me. And so I put a middle rate. I'm one of the percentage who put the middle rating. Could
Well,
you say more about sort of what was
yeah,
going on for you when you put that question in?
you're a fellow DEI practitioner.
Yes.
So Ellen, you know, what I started noticing maybe 2 years ago in my practice is there were people in my groups who were spontaneously talking about, you know, I know so-and-so is trying to be inclusive and I think his behavior really is inclusive toward me and I still don't feel like I belong. So for me, this may have come about earlier, but when I noticed the phenomenon, it was about 2 years ago when the B for belonging started showing up. People started talking about inclusion and belonging. And then there's been social science research that's at least 2 years old. I think it's older than that. I just got clued in about 2 years ago on the phenomenon of belonging. So I was kind of referring to that because it was a sobering thought to me. You know, I thought, well, I'm learning how to behave in a way that's inclusive of other people. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to feel like they belong. So that's where I was coming from.
Thank you.
Mhm,
Rianna, this is Elena.
mhm.
And as a woman of color, regard to that feeling of people trying to be inclusive but not feeling belonging, I mean, that is about me. And at the same time, there's a sense of othering, especially when folks gush or put a spotlight on me.
Mm.
So that's my reaction to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
I
Ryan.
I would posit that in large groups or groups of more than two, there's no safety in that in that honesty of how you feel as if you belong, especially now, and that the differences are so easily stretched, um, and stay stretched when that you come out of that duet. So that's my feeling, and I think that's I don't think the rubber band is stretched. I think the rubber band is broken. I think it's gone. I think
Mm.
something else. I think there's something else that needs to happen.
Mm.
Uh, I, no, Gil Crosby, who is a huge Lewinite, I don't necessarily agree that Lewin's feeling is what's here now. So
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, so, and that's really interesting how we're reflecting on now as we think about back into Rebecca's comments and Bob's comments about leadership and unity and the entanglement, and then the comments from Rebecca around um, the ability for people to be connected to each other with different modes of communicating and how they can communicate and connect. And then we talk about this. What do you all think about as you look at the three? Or is there a ribbon that connects them? Is there a reflection you have on the three? If you have a question for either um, anybody from Rianna to Bob to Rebecca, any questions, reflections y'all want to share in the few minutes that we have? Jackie would like to say something.
I have one observation and also one brief question for the poll that I just did. And I personally feel great when I was going through that, and then felt in part being understood when I was reading through that experience. So I really appreciate this opportunity of going through that. And my brief question is whether did you develop those that skill, or was that a published skill in research? I'm interested in learning more about that, and perhaps use that insight into some of the research I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Really touches my heart. I made all of those up last night. Yeah.
So there's not, I cannot cite or use some of the items.
You can absolutely use anything you want to. Sure.
Yeah, very gracious of you. And if I may perhaps contact you afterwards to get the ratings and your permission to maybe think about that, that will be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I would love that, Jackie, and I want you to watch my reactions right now. See that? Do you know what the red heart means?
I think it's very universal across all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Shishini.
Okay.
I lived in Taiwan for 2 years, so I picked up some Mandarin while I was there.
Yeah, I appreciate all the information. Thank you.
That was a couple of thoughts.
Affirmative action is pretty wiped out at this point. DEI grew out of affirmative action because there were people, I was around when this happened. I missed being part of the greatest generation by 1 year. I'm the leading edge of the boomers is who I am. So that's how old I am. And I was around in the early 80s doing this work, starting with gender work in the corporation when the powers that be, and I was not a power that be, I was learning from the powers that be, realized that we needed to do something other than affirmative action, because that was about forcing people and, mandating. And we know how well that works. Nobody has clued in Mr. Trump yet, but he might find out sooner or later. That we needed to do something positive that was inclusive of everyone, that had to do with understanding how I want to use one of Bob's phrases here. how our different configurations of matter, I'm sure I'm murdering it, Bob, but how yeah, we each are different configurations of this one unified field. Well, everybody, including me, missed the memo about being part of a unified field. And so we were trying to value differences at the time, and it's really, if you think about the model of dialectical materialism, from thesis, antithesis to synthesis, we're just like going through endless loops of all of that all of the time, I think. And I think we're in the middle space between antithesis and synthesis right now, which, William Bridges probably called it the transition.
Rianna, I want to mention your book that you wrote with Carol Pierce and Rick Huntley. It's a great seminal book on approach to racial equity and other isms.
Thank you, Elena. The check will be in the mail. That was lovely. It's on race, from racial inequality to equity and inclusion. Geez, what's the rest of the title? Anyway.
Yeah, Jackie may appreciate getting that book because it really covers a lot of material.
And it's inclusive of, it attempts to be inclusive of all different race and color identities.
She may already have it.
She has it?
No, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't currently have it, so I do greatly appreciate it. I'm relatively new to the inclusion side.
Well, Jackie, it's lovely to have you be here. I don't think I've seen you before. I'm going to put my silly AOL address, which I'm trying to get changed, but for right now, it's still extant.
Great. Thanks, Rianna. So while you're doing that, I want to wrap us up here. So Rebecca, what would be, a couple words of advice you'd want to leave us with if you wanted us to think or reflect on anything moving forward that would you would like us to think about that would be you think would be helpful? Your most important piece of advice based on sort of today, where you're at today.
Where I'm at just now. What I'm seeing is in the sector that I work in is a deepening of commitment, and in this sandstorm of a world that we're in, and an allyship between organisations that used to compete against each other for funding. So that's interesting for me. And there's a further mobilisation of change happening. So I suppose it's the question could be the one that I forgot to say is how can what's been chiseled, the metal that's been chiseled by these communities, this work that in the sector that I'm in, be applied to organisations and change as the breadth of it, and be applied to other organisations that are nothing to do with the sector that I'm in. So, what is it about the arts, health, and wellbeing sector, for want of a better description, that actually produces new knowledge production, and a fearlessness, if you like, and an ability to take risks, and a new language.
Thanks, Rebecca. Rianna, what are some final comments you want to share with us before we go?
Well, I was going to answer the question that you asked, Rebecca, so that's what I'm prepared to do.
Yeah, that's however, yeah. That's
yeah,
fine.
I would ask everyone to just reflect, take a moment to reflect. Call in the altered space that Bob created for us if you can, and settle down into that and ask yourself, how are you using yourself in order to pursue whatever you have your purpose be in this lifetime around human and organization development and change that is toward the good. In other words, that doesn't cause harm.
Yeah, thanks, Rianna. And Bob, how about you?
Well, I've been reflecting on one of my favorite Martin Luther King quotes. I saw it on the wall at the King Center. We took a whole group of our employees and customers through a pretty powerful experience there. And on the wall, it says, "How can I violate you when you are me? I violate you when you are me." And I think that expresses the deepest underpinnings of what he was about and the place from which the thing you're talking about, Rianna, how do we have the conversation with that as the fundamental ground, right? And speaking from that, speaking as that. And I was really taken too with, is Rebecca still here? Yeah, there with your, just the inclusiveness and the love that runs through your work. I could feel it, and I can understand why it's so impactful. I'm going to wrap, but I want to get in touch with you because I want to explore the telepathy tapes with you. If you haven't heard them, listen to them. They are utterly mind-blowing and heart-opening about the autistic, the brilliance, the spiritual capability of deeply autistic people. It's unbelievable information, the telepathy.
Wow. Thanks, Bob. Thank you for that. Well, big hug to everybody. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Rianna. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer. I get to see you again, bringing a group of students to see you. And so we'll have some fun over in London with you this coming summer. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all soon. We have another one next week. Look on the regular schedule, and you'll see that. You can see the recordings of this and all the previous ones on the digital flyer for this, because we just replace it with the links to the recordings, and so you can have it all right there. So thank you, Lisa, for your good work, and everybody have a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.